When you're ready.
Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, welcome back to Nacho Talk. Today we have a very special guest star, one of my favorite people in the Oregon food scene, Lane Selman from the Culinary Breeding Network.
Hi.
So today Lane and I are going to make Sicilian style nachos because Lane, her heritage comes from Sicily and she loves all things Sicilian, just like I love all things Mexican. And we both love cooking. And she put a list of Sicilian ingredients together and asked ChatGPT how those would make a good nacho. I know. And then we got a recipe, but we're going to tweak it a little bit. And we're going to make composed, fancy Sicilian nachos. So I'll tell you the ingredients that we're going to use today. Or actually, Lane, you should tell us the ingredients we're going to use today. And then I'll tell you who Lane is and why we think she is so fabulous.
Thanks. Excited to be here. Love all of Nikki's food and salsas and chips and all the things. So I just chose the things that are like very Sicilian for Nikki to use her creative genius to come up with these nachos. So the eggplant is very, very Sicilian. So I chose eggplant as one of the ingredients. For the cheese, caciocavallo. And that can be made from cow's milk, but this one is actually from water buffalo. So that is also common. We have lemons because those are very Sicilian, anchovies, capers, and ceci, which is just chickpeas.
And we're going to use sun-dried tomatoes too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also, they dry a lot of tomatoes under the sun. I think they do these kinds of things in Mexico and other places in the world to preserve. So a lot of things we could do, they use the heat, right? They use the heat and they use salt a lot to preserve in Sicily.
And actually, the ones that I have are the ones I made last year from our tomatoes.
Oh,
so
cool.
Since they were made in the Pacific Northwest, they didn't probably get enough heat, but hopefully they'll still be good. So while I talk about who Lane is, she is going to show you how to prep an eggplant for our nachos. And since we're making composed nachos, she's going to cube them. So Lane runs the Culinary Breeding Network and is also a researcher at OSU. She's a vegetable researcher at OSU. And that's how she started the Culinary Breeding Network, was she started working with vegetable growers at the university level, started working with farmers, and has always had a great culinary eye and love of food, and so was also working with chefs and realized that there was a big disconnect happening between what the growers were trying to develop and what the chefs actually wanted to use and would choose for flavor and for ease of use. And so in turn, she has created this amazing organization, which in my opinion, I think has done the most to change Oregon food and agriculture and had huge rippling effects all outside of Oregon and even in the world today with the way that people run events centered around vegetables and the love of cooking.
And it's been really very important. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. And to have like someone like yourself, a culinary professional, to work with the plant breeders to kind of understand what they should be selecting for, because they can know what the growers need. And it's like, of course, we're thinking about yield sometimes, but a lot of times it's like even before that, it's like disease resistance, flavor as like a general thing. But then really like when we were doing pepper trials to try to find peppers that would ripen early in our, we're in a temperate area.
Well, and we have a very quick cool down, so they have to ripen early.
Exactly.
Which most hot peppers do not.
And we can be focused on that, and the breeders can select for that and know, but you are like the chili expert. So then we can bring, after we harvest these things, we know how they perform in the field, we can bring them to you. And for years you were doing this where you've been evaluating them, tasting them, making notes, providing that feedback back to the breeder so that we know like which ones are good for which types of applications, or if one is just like not very good at all. Because we want them all to grow well in the field because we want the farmers to be successful. So we don't want to choose something that doesn't work well in the field, but we definitely don't want to choose something that doesn't actually taste good. And so you've been involved in like with the mild habaneros to work
I
with
mean,
Jim
that's
Myers.
part of why I am such a chili expert is because Lane got me hooked up with working with Jim Myers at OSU and I've for years been working with tasting peppers out there and planting different varieties that I thought were interesting and then developing them. It's been super fun.
And then you named them.
Oh yeah, I did. We did get to name 2 new varieties of mild habaneros. They're out now. You can plant them in your yard. You can buy them at Portland Nursery. They're called the Mild Thing and the Nada Hada.
Great. And you get seeds from Territorial Seeds if you do want to go seeds. Yeah.
So what we're talking about is a lot of times people will cut up eggplant, put salt all over it, and let it sit in a colander to sweat, and you'll see it start beating out to reduce some of the bitterness. I actually don't ever do it either, but sometimes I will just throw it all together with salt and put it in a bowl and let it sweat, but then I won't wash it off or anything. I'll then just put it in a pan.
It changes the texture too because it takes out the moisture of it too, It makes it a little more rubbery sort of. But I think we both cook in a very intuitive way because we grew up around cooking and we've always cooked, so we're not really into like doing like the very fussy things, like measuring or anything like this. We grew up, in our families, like, and if you tried to write down like your grandmother's, like for me, like lasagna, recipe, it's just like, she doesn't have anything written down.
You just put some of this and that.
I know, and then you're like trying to follow her. I remember when I was like much younger, like I would always help her, but I never did it from start to finish. And then I moved away and like went to college. I was like, how do we do all of these? And I would try to, follow her around in the kitchen. I'm like, you just did something else. You didn't tell me.
I know, that's so funny. That's what my mom used to do with my grandmother. And then she would make her stop and she would take the ingredients out and measure them. So we would have a recipe
too. So I think we came from very similar backgrounds in that way. And so, I don't do any of I even like when I like canned tomatoes, I don't even take the skins off most of the time. Just like, I'm just, keeping all of it.
Yeah, that's real cooking.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be hard.
It's
still
cooking.
Nona cooking, but it still tastes really good. Okay, so Lane's gonna fry the eggplant in olive oil, and just so we could have a little taste test, I did the same thing this morning, and I cut up the eggplant into squares, and I just tossed it in olive oil and roasted it in a pan at 400. And this is what I got. I probably roasted it for about a half an hour. Okay, so while you're frying the eggplant, I am going to start grating some cheese. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to make a chickpea puree to spread on our nachos. So here is this cheese. Okay, so here's a taste for you. I know you want to try it. There's a little taste. Yeah, I do. Okay, so I'm going to grate this because this is going to be our melting cheese. It's so creamy. Okay, Lane, so talk a little bit about the start of Culinary Breeding Network and like how it developed. And, I mean, right at this point, like it is totally revered and people are creating and asking you how to create similar sagras and things all over the world now.
Right.
But it wasn't that easy at first, right? Were people like, what are you talking about? This is a crazy idea. What, are you just like a PR person for vegetables?
I know I'm like I'm living in Portlandia episode. Okay. So like, this is like, probably 15 years ago, I was always working with plant breeders. And so I work at Oregon State University. I was working with a lot of plant breeders from all over the country. And farmers to try to find varieties of different vegetables that work for organic farmers. So sometimes the same varieties oftentimes the same varieties that work for conventional farmers don't work for organic farmers. We want to have natural disease resistance. The breeders are selecting for a lot of different things. So I really firsthand would see like the power of plant breeding because we worked with all these farmers. We would grow out breeding lines that weren't yet like varieties that were available commercially. Okay, so I was seeing firsthand when I would go out to all these farms like the power of plant breeding and the way that they were growing these breeding lines on the farm, and how it was like solving a lot of issues that farmers had. So I really wanted everyone to know about it because plant breeding in like the seed world is like very hidden. I always call it these are the wizards behind the curtain, right? Because you just don't see this, and it has a huge impact on how plants perform.
But how did you even know people would be interested in it? Because, you know,
Right.
I mean, most people don't even care.
Okay. Yes, exactly.
I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people.
Oh yeah, it seems like it could be a dry subject.
There you
Why would anybody want to come to an event and buy a ticket to meet these people, right?
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I had a journalist contact me who in like January who was really, really interested in doing a story about it, about plant breeding. So, you know, and bringing this to light. And this is getting more complicated, but anyway. And so I was excited. I was like, okay, this is so great. And then when I got off the phone with him, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because I kind of had this Culinary Breeding Network thing going on where I was convening chefs to taste breeding lines and taste different varieties and give us input, right?
Yeah.
So after we grew them in the field, we knew how to grow in the field. I wanted people to taste them and tell us what they tasted like and what they liked about them in a culinary sense. So,
okay, I'm going to pause you for 1 sec while I tell the studio audience here how to make this chickpea puree. So we did use canned chickpeas also, only because I didn't have any more at home, but you can soak them and cook them off yourself. But these are Italian chickpeas. I just rinsed them, organic. I rinsed them here, and we're going to add juice of a lemon, a little bit of salt, and some sun-dried tomatoes and blitz it up. I'm going to reach over for the sun-dried tomatoes that I just dried and put in olive oil and have had in my fridge. This is the last of last year's sun-dried tomatoes.
So I'll tell you for the eggplant too, I heated up olive oil in the pan. I tried to make it a little bit, hot first, threw the eggplant cubes in there and salted it, and now just trying to, just cook them. Okay, so this was a time, so I had a lot of trials normally on projects that I worked with through the university out in the field. But this was a period of time when we, for whatever, boring reasons, but we didn't have funding this one particular year to do the field trials. So normally what I would have done was taken this journalist out to the field. We would have looked at the trials, seen side by side varieties of different, let's say peppers, right? So different peppers side by side, you'd be able to see how the plants are performing. We could talk about the different breeders that bred each of the ones, and what they were focused on, and that's it, right? Well, we didn't have that, right? So I was like, well, I have to bring the field to him. So I'm going to have to recreate this. So I was like, how am I going to do this? So I basically just made it like a tasting event where I brought him to, all these different tables. I think we had 14 tables. So it was side by side, like peppers, but all these other projects that I knew that were going on. Like we were doing a project where we were trying to, like in Mexican food and in Thai food, that a lot of times they use cilantro root to pound. Like I know that they use it for like curries and stuff in Thailand, and we had chefs that were really interested in like, oh, we would really like to have, we would really like to get cilantro root, which is not like commonly grown.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, but what variety should that be? Yeah. Because they're all going to be different from one another. So we grew out these trials. So it would be side by side, all these tables of like cilantro root and peppers and barley and all these different projects are happening.
See how much goes into your food, people, that you don't even realize? It's amazing.
Yeah. So if I was like, well, if I'm going to be organizing this for him, might as well just invite a couple hundred people. And OGC, Organically Grown Company, is a fantastic wholesaler that we have that started by farmers here in the Pacific Northwest, gave me like $2,500, and I put the entire thing on that way amazing. Because there's so many fantastic people in this community, like yourself and others, that they just donated like the space or their time or products or whatever, so that we could. This is getting done.
Showcase vegetables.
Yeah, so we could showcase vegetables and grains and fruits and all these super cool things because they wanted to be a part of it. So anyway, that's kind of how that it started, and like that's how I basically was like.
That was the first. First culinary,
and that was
breeding network event.
2014, and that was we called it the variety showcase because it was a showcase of variety and diversity of different crops at every single table. I mean, so many people were like, "Oh my god!" Like, because you could go to a table and we grew 6 different varieties of cilantro, and people were like, "I thought there was like one." And I'm like, no, there's a lot of everything.
And people got curious, right?
Yes.
Okay, hold your ears. Okay, so we've got our 2 eggplants. So we're kind of making our toppings platter here so that when we're ready to make our fancy composed nachos, we'll have our ingredients ready to use. So you can see how different sauteed and roasted came out. Okay, so we have this beautiful chickpea puree. The other things that we're going to put into our nachos are anchovies, capers, so salty.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to start our first layer of nachos now because those are going to go under the broiler to melt the cheese. So, are we using these chips?
We have to use your chips.
First thing, yes, you do have to use very good chips.
The best chips.
Okay, so Lane, we're gonna smear the chips with our chickpea puree.
Right. So we have like aperitivo, which is all over Italy, and so that's like around like when we would normally eat dinner at like 6 or something like that is when they would have aperitivo, and they do that and they don't eat dinner till like 8 o'clock at night or something. And so with aperitivo, because they don't tend to drink alcohol unless they're eating food also, which is a good idea.
Which we should take a lesson from.
You get something usually that's pretty typical of the whatever the place is that you're at, the region, or and so you get something nice to eat, usually
like a spritz.
Yeah, so you can have your Aperol spritz, and then you have they just come out and they bring you. Sometimes
they bring you
just
snacks
like potato chips, which is not so exciting.
Yeah, but it's homemade potato chips.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is going to be, a good beanie protein start to your nacho, and then on that we're going to put is it caciocavallo? Caciocavallo on top of that, and then we're going to melt this cheese because this is like such a soft, beautiful cheese. And then after we melt that, we're going to top it with the rest of our Sicilian ingredients, including one of the Hot Mama Salsa products we make with Calabrian chilies, which are a chili originating in Italy. Top mine with a little eggplant. Now, eggplant on nachos. This is unusual.
I know.
Sure, that's okay. I'm gonna
parsley.
We have basil.
Oh yeah,
in the garden.
Great.
Yeah, you gotta have a green. Like this is so much like cheese and salt. You gotta have a green.
Is quite delicious and ubiquitous in Sicily.
Oh my god, these look gorgeous.
They look very
They look very. Getting it? We're gonna make a herb cigar, right? Roll it up. Okay, so you got your leaves stacked there. Do you want some of that for yours? I'll use a shiso leaf or a basil leaf, whatever the biggest leaf is, and put all the herbs inside. And then you just roll it up, and then you cut it in strips, and you've got what they call a chiffonade. All right. Did you already melt that one too?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Just drizzle some of that on top of it. We just drizzle that on this and just eat it.
Okay.
Okay.